Hey everybody, today I am going to be revisiting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film came out in 1974. It was directed by Tobe Hooper. And I say revisiting because obviously I reviewed this film several years ago, but I don't know, it just keeps growing and growing in my mind as something more and more special, and it just has such a massive presence in my life, I think, so far as how I filter my own human experience. And I don't know, I felt like revisiting it and seeing how it struck me maybe this time around. And as I suspected, yes, it did hit me differently this time in a more impactful way than I thought it would, and in all of the right ways. This is one of those movies that I didn't love the first time I saw it. I could tell that it was really well made. I could see that there was major craft going into this without question. And I think I kind of dismissed it because I saw it as just a very simple, kind of gratuitous slasher movie. But I'm so glad that I've kind of come around on it, just because, yes, it is a very simple concept and a very simple, straightforward story, and yet I think the fundamental understanding of what those simple ideas can evoke within the film experience is really astounding, and that is the key of it. And that is why this is one of my all-time favorite horror films. This film is just very abstract and very visual in my mind. It makes me think of all kinds of different, very disgusting images. It makes me think of like a cut blooming. The mood of the movie is searing, always, just underneath the surface. It's kind of like buzzing, kind of like a razor blade kind of feeling. It's caught in some weird place that's in the shadows, that's maybe in the basements of like these old houses out on the country roads. It's in these like schizophrenic ramblings. And to me, this film is about brutality that has never truly wavered throughout life, and especially in humans, and how that can manifest itself in the modern world, be suppressed. And I think particularly this movie is capturing that in the sense of what is 1970s America. And I don't want to get too like academic in those ways with it, but it is really a time capsule. Sure, you can talk about the commentary in this movie and like the obvious correlations between like slaughterhouses and corporations, and obviously animal cruelty for sure, and the interchangeability between that and humans. In this story, that is very survival of the fittest. But I do think that all of that is maybe just kind of just a slice of the pie. It's just one aspect of a much larger picture that this film is painting for us. And the setting is crucial because Texas is just full of wide open space that is very, very lonely. And I love the idea of like these little quiet Texas towns that are slowly tapering off into the horizon. And it's like, who's going to hear you scream out there? This film is agony and anarchy, and it isn't flinching at all in any of that. It's about primal, raging emotions that, you know, are combined with like endorphins and adrenaline. It's almost like it's licking those wounds in a certain way. And obviously, like I said at the beginning, we've seen stories like this over and over and over. Slasher movies tend to be pretty simple. But I think it's the textures in this particular one that feel the most honest to me and the most unrelenting. Few films capture violence like this where they're actually not showing you as much violence as you think you're seeing. There is a scene in the beginning where, you know, you have your young group of friends and they're on a road trip and they're driving through the Texas roads. They pick up a hitchhiker, and this guy is a little strange. He proves himself to become more and more eccentric on the road. He's possibly mentally ill. It's very unsettling. And very quickly they realize, maybe we shouldn't have picked this guy up. And he takes a knife and he proceeds to cut into his hand with it. And naturally everybody in the van is absolutely horrified. And while they're freaking out, he's relishing in it. He's laughing. He's enjoying himself. And this stuck out to me as a very, very strong opening that really expresses what the film is about. So much of the thesis is all laid out here very, very cleverly. And even though this is going to grow bigger so far as an idea, just that initial idea of him cutting himself and everybody else recoiling from it, but yet the handicapped character in the van, Franklin, is the only one who seems to be curious about this man, and he wants to know like why he cut himself. It's like, what kind of mind can just do that to themselves? And Franklin is one of the most interesting characters for that reason, because, you know, it's like the pretty people in the van, the young 20-something-year-old people. It's like they don't have to give a shit about the dark aspects of life because it doesn't really involve them. The world is made for young, pretty people. So whatever's going on in their lives at this particular point that the movie takes place in, you're going to assume most of them are thriving. Whereas Franklin represents, you know, the outsider, the reject, somebody who is maybe on the spectrum or has some sort of mental struggles that we can clearly see, that is very similar to the hitchhiker that they pick up. So that's part of where the curiosity, I think, comes from. But, you know, it's his rejection in life, as I said, and the isolation from all the popular girls and boys that has forced him to have to think about those dark things. And it's like, that's part of why he has no filter, why he's so curious. I like that this film is really interested in the rejects and in that aspect of the world and how society has kind of mangled them. For instance, the villains in the movie, like I said, there's that correlation between the hitchhiker and Franklin, but a lot of those characters to me represent, yeah, they represent violence, but they represent a world of rejection. These people are never going to be accepted by society, so it's like they work in the country, they work where they can. And in the case of this family, these people are working in slaughterhouses. You know, like in the flashy cities, they don't have to think about those sorts of things, but when you eat your meat, that's where it's coming from. Obviously, if you watch my channel, you know this, but if you couldn't tell by my accent, I'm a Texas native. I've lived in Texas my entire life, and I've done a million road trips just like this one in very similar areas, and I think it really does capture that aspect of Texas. It really captures the spirit of it. That redneck type of aggression I really enjoy, I think, the most. And I like that that's the film's strength, that it's low, it's down and dirty, it's not afraid of that, and yet it is still artful by contrast. There's like a cheap kind of artificiality to the acting, and you know, it's obviously a very low budget movie, and yet look at the flow of it, look at just the craft of it. It feels, I think, for the most part, very seamless as a film. That art house, grindhousey sort of exploitation feel to it punctuates everything. And I think, for me, one of the standouts in this movie is the sound design. I think it's absolutely incredible because it is so effective, I think, at infusing what is literally happening on screen with things that are not literal. So the sounds can get real kind of abstract and cinematic and full of all these like scraping kind of dissonant textures, but none of it is ever feeling like pretentious, arty, or anything. You use a lot of unlikely sounds and images and feelings often to reach something honest within the literal. To me, that's one of the great powers of art, and it's just mastered here. I really like the villains in the movie. When I mean the villains, I mean the family of cannibals here. They're just really effective. And Leatherface, as an example, he's not deep, he's not complex or anything like that, but he's simple and effective, a lot like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. And yet there are moments in the film where you do get to feel a sense of sympathy towards him, or you're curious about him. Especially, you know, the curious things that he does, like he has this mask and he's wearing lipstick and he's wearing the wig. And it's very much like Norman Bates, but like spat right from the Inferno. And the way his character is introduced is, oh my God, it is incredible, incredibly effective. It's just like the guy going in the house and the typical like, hello, anybody home? Do I hear something? The guy kind of stumbles, and out of nowhere, Leatherface just comes in and just bam, smashes him with a hammer. He just drags him quickly and slams that metal door. And it's just the heft of that. There's something about his body language, just the mass, you know, like with which he moves and everything. It's just so scary because you can just see in this moment, you can feel it. This is a killing machine. The dinner scene is one of the most memorable dinner scenes of all time, and perhaps one of the most, if not the most disturbing family dinner scene I've ever seen in the history of cinema. And yet I think it provides a lot of insight into our characters, which is why it's important. Initially, I saw it as kind of gratuitous, but it's capturing this weird dynamic, really, where you understand kind of the hierarchy of the family, and then obviously our poor heroine Sally is just tied up and screaming for her life, having to witness it all. When the camera zooms into her eye and you see all the little capillaries, it's just, let's say, I love that scene. I think it encompasses the entire movie in one image in a way. It's like this film isn't even technically body horror fully, and yet I feel like it's more effective than a lot of the movies that are just, you know, classified basically as body horror. I think that moment is so disturbing because it's like you're getting a taste of what we really all are in a way. Anytime like there's a cut, we freak out, just like at the beginning of the movie. We don't like the sight of our own blood. And this movie is like, no, I'm going to take my insides and wear them on my outsides metaphorically. It's like a world of bones and organs and muscles and blood. It's like looking below the surface of the ocean, and so few of us really know what we're truly made of, especially as the world grows more and more corporate in a sense. But yet this movie is taking that idea and presenting to us in a very staccato sort of manner. You feel the memory, you feel just like the zeitgeist, like I said, capturing the 1970s. The Vietnam War is still very present in people's minds at the time this movie came out. And again, I don't want to get too academic and contextual in that sense, in that way, but it's like, yeah, you can really feel America at that time. An America where it's like the war lingering and the horrors are brought into people's homes every night through the news. We're getting to see up close and personal what the war is like in a way that has never been done before. There's something darker. There's just an innocence that has tarnished America at this point. And I really feel that in the final shot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think is one of the greatest final shots of all time. I think it's one of the greatest endings of all time. And it's just so simple. Like on paper, if I had read it, I'd be like, that's interesting, but I don't really understand how they're going to, what they're going to do with it. But then you see it, and it's just the most breathtaking statement. It's just bone chilling. Watching Leatherface just swinging that chainsaw, and it's gleeful, it's wild. It is kind of like a Rorschach test moment where I think you can pour into that moment whatever you feel in that moment. But it is the carnage and the anarchy and the mix of the glee and the adrenaline that I'm talking about. And then suddenly the movie just slices to black, and it's just like, and it's having to face that blackness of that screen after all that you've just experienced that is just so overwhelming and so incredible. It taps into some special darkness within all of us that I just don't think other movies of its type are able to do with the same kind of confidence. Again, all of the subliminal images of like Vietnam on television and like pornos at the time, slaughterhouses, it's all bleeding together for me internally. And as I watch the movie, it's like I feel less innocent through it somehow. Or I should say, it's tapping into ideas and memories and things that made me less innocent. And it's somehow all evoked within this movie. And I think, yeah, that's kind of what the movie is saying in a way. Maybe, I don't know. But it's like we're all a little bit less innocent now. And Leatherface swinging that chainsaw the way he is, it's like, you know, it isn't going to stop anytime soon. This will just continue forever and ever. And ever. This is a masterpiece, you guys. It is truly one of those movies where the more you watch it, I cannot say this about many horror films, but the more that you watch it, the more brutal it becomes, the more scary it becomes. And truly the devil is in the details, because it's the poetry, bringing out the poetry and the brutality that is so important, that gives it true dimension and meaning. I say see this movie for Halloween if you haven't, or revisit it because it's that good, and let me know what you think of it. Again, one of the greatest slasher films of all time. But that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I sell prints of my work. If that's something that you guys are interested in, you can always go to the website, and if you have any questions about a commission or a print, you can email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for your support as always. Welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.